Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Super excited to have you all in space this evening. And before we get started, I just wanted to apologize for not being on camera this evening. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, but I really wanted to be in space with you all tonight, especially since we'll be sharing some important information. So yeah, and also for those who don't know me, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Brianna. I'm the Membership Engagement Outreach Coordinator here at IJ, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'll pass it to Adriana to introduce herself as well.
Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday again. I feel like we were just here. I literally feel like we were just here. So welcome into the space, everyone. My name is Adriana Griffith. For those that may not know me, I am the statewide advocacy manager here at Initiate Justice, and I'm really excited for tonight's meeting. We're going to hear some nice little announcements, maybe get a call to action or two. But also really just excited to hear about our bill package from our policy team. So, and I know you're all excited about that as well. So, thank you, and I'll pass it back over to you, Brianna.
Thank you, Adriana. And yes, like she said, super excited about tonight. That's especially why I didn't want to miss. But just a few housekeeping before we get started. I just wanted to let folks know that this call is being recorded, so please try to stay muted and use the chat box to add any questions or comments that may come up through tonight's meeting. And also for those who are joining us first time, welcome. Make sure that you sign up to become an official member of IJ using our tiny URL that will be dropped in the chat box. And here you can receive monthly updates, official announcements, and quarterly newsletters. And then before we get started, I just wanted to quickly go over tonight's agenda and what we have in store for you all. So we're going to kick off tonight's video with a grounding video, which we've been doing a little bit recently. This will just help center ourselves before tonight's meeting. Throughout the grounding video, folks are welcome to stay on or off camera, whatever feels comfortable for you. And then after the grounding video, you'll get to hear some organizational announcements. And then we have a super exciting presentation for you that will be tonight's focus. You'll be, and it's a highly anticipated one as well. You'll be able to hear from our policy team who will be joining us to unveil our 2024 policy package. With that, before we get started, I just wanted to remind everyone who just joined to stay muted, and unless invited to come off mute. This just helps to kind of avoid any background noise. But as I said, please feel free to use the chat box, introduce yourself, let us know where you're zooming in from. And for first timers, please let us know how you heard about us. And yeah, so we'll just get started with the grounding section. As I said, we just wanted to take like a few minutes to hold the space that we're in right now. As a way to do this, just kind of take a moment and pause, ground ourselves. We're gonna do a 5-minute exercise. As I mentioned, you all are encouraged, or not encouraged, you can stay on or off camera, whatever's comfortable for you. And I'll go ahead and get started. And let me know if you can't hear the noise, just maybe a thumbs up.
Thank you for joining me for today's practice. Let's take a comfortable seat, perhaps with a cushion or block to elevate your hips. Allow yourself these first few moments to settle in, making any necessary adjustments. Once you're ready, gently close down your eyes. Start to notice your breathing, gently deepening and slowing down your breath. Take a deep inhale through the nose and out through your mouth. Once more, just like that. Deep inhale through the nose and out through your mouth. Allow your face to soften, releasing the jaw, the shoulders, and allow the crown of the head to lift up towards the sky as you ground down through your seat. Sensing the length along the entire spinal column. Begin to notice the breathing coming in and out of the nose. Perhaps sensing the coolness of the breath as you inhale and the slight warmth of the breath as you exhale. Allow the breath to be as it needs to be. Some breaths might be long, some might be short. One breath gently cascading into the next. Imagine your mind to be as spacious as a vast, open, clear sky. And any thoughts, sensations, or feelings that arise are like clouds that simply pass through. Observe and recognize them, but no need to engage or respond. Creating the space for whatever needs to be present to be here. Notice the space that you have created and continue to lightly follow your breathing. Place your left hand over the center of your chest and then your right hand on top of the left. You may feel the grounding sensation of the hands on your chest. And allow the breath to softly deepen into that space. With each exhale, softening and letting go. Three more breaths, just like that. Inhaling into your hands. And as you exhale, letting go. Allow your hands to release down by your side onto your thighs. And when you're ready, gently blink open the eyes.
Okay, when folks are ready, they can come back to the space. Feel free to come back on camera or stay off, whatever's comfortable for you. And with that, I will pass it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brianna. Hi, everybody. Again, as Brianna said, feel free to stay off camera or come back whenever you are ready. As I mentioned before, my name is Adriana Griffith, and I am the statewide advocacy manager here at Initiate Justice. I saw a couple of folks join as we were doing the grounding, so I just wanted to reintroduce myself. So at this point in tonight's agenda, we are going to go over some of our announcements. So we have just a couple of organizational announcements we want to let folks know about, and then we will move on to our presentation from our policy department. So really quickly, just want to let folks know that the February 2024 edition of the Inside Journal, which is our 4 times a year quarterly journal that we send into CDCR state prisons throughout the year, 4 times a year. You can let your loved ones know that it is on its way. And so the Inside membership team has been working really, really hard to get it out. And we need your help. And they need your help on the next edition of the next edition of the Inside Journal, which comes out around early May sometime. So if you are available to help translate journal articles from English to Spanish, we would love for you to reach out to our Inside membership manager, Crystal, and connect with her. This is a volunteer opportunity, and you can set your own schedule, do it on your own time. It's just a few hours a week. But we're really hoping to continue to get our community involved in making these updates so that our Inside Journal is accessible to a huge portion of our incarcerated population that may only speak Spanish. And hopefully in the future, we will be able to expand this to other languages. But for now, we are just focusing on Spanish language. So I'm going to drop Crystal's information into the chat right now. And so again, we would really appreciate any support. And this could possibly, and I feel very confident to say that this could be done either in person or virtually. So if you are interested, definitely reach out to Crystal and she can provide you with a little bit more information on that. The next announcement that we have is a really exciting announcement. It's a save the date announcement. And so Initiate Justice is going to be participating in the Quest for Democracy Lobby Day. So that lobby day is scheduled for Monday, April 29th. It is going to be in Sacramento at the state capitol, a full day event. More information will be coming out soon in terms of how you can participate with us and show up in representing Initiate Justice as an Initiate Justice member and or outside organizer. So again, more information to come on that. We will be sending it out to our membership listserv. And so we encourage everybody here tonight, this evening, if you are not already signed up to our email list, I encourage you all to sign up for that email list so you can get this update as well as many other updates that we will be having throughout the year. So dropping the information into the chat right now. So again, save the date, April 29th. More information will be coming out. But really excited for Initiate Justice to participate in this lobby day. It is the first lobby day of the year that we will be participating in. So really, really hope to see the community show out and advocate for some really, really powerful bills this year. And one of our co-sponsored bills, which Greg will be going over later in his presentation, will be on the agenda. So really, really excited that we will be able to be in space and advocate for our community. Last and final announcement before we move on is from our Inside Organizing team. So our Inside Organizing team, for those of you who know Adam and Lee, they do a lot of the inside organizing on the inside of the prison facilities in California. So we actually have 3 staff members who will be going into SAC prison for a civic engagement workshop on B Yard. And so we are finally able to get into that yard and do these civic engagement workshops with the folks that are currently incarcerated there. So if you have loved ones there, tell them that we are officially approved to come in and we are looking forward to being in attendance and sharing some wonderful, wonderful information about how even though they are incarcerated, they can still plug in and they can still be involved in advocacy and civic engagement. So really, really excited about those announcements. Are there any questions about anything before we pass it over to policy? Amazing. Not seeing that in the chat. So that's great. I will pass it back to policy. Just remember to sign up for our email list at tinyurl.com/joinij if you want to be notified about the Lobby Day event and any other future events that we are having. Passing it back to you, Brianna.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So yeah, like we said, tonight's presentation is all about IJ's 2024 bill package. We're really lucky to have Greg here from our policy team to share the package and answer any questions that may come up. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it to Greg. Thank you, Greg, for being here tonight.
Great, thank you. And hello, everyone. My name is Greg. I serve as the policy director for Initiate Justice. Tonight, we're going to be running through our co-sponsored bills, and I'll try to give you all a good understanding of what's to come this year and what it's going to look like. So on the next slide, you can see the list of the complete list of the co-sponsored bills that we're working on this year. The first few here are two-year bills, so measures that were introduced last year that we're still working on, that are still pending. And then we have 5 new bills that we'll talk about this year. We're working, as always, on a wide range of criminal justice reform issues. Initiate Justice does not exist just to serve one issue or one population. We are always working on a wide array of issues, and this year's legislative package continues the commitment to that work. So this is the overall list. We'll go through all of them one by one. As folks have questions, I would ask that you, in the moment, ask them instead of like waiting till the end. So there's a question about the bill, feel free to put it in the chat or, put your hand up, whatever. It's just easier, I think, for the flow of the conversation to ask your questions as they arise instead of, trying to wait for the end and then perhaps there's a bunch of questions. So with that, we can go to the next slide. We'll talk about AB 544 with Assemblymember Isaac Bryan. This is a bill that's all about voting in county jails. What we're trying to do with this bill is establish polling centers inside 3 county jails as to be determined by a pilot program administered by the Secretary of State that will allow for in-person voting for eligible voters in county jail. So about 2/3 of people in county jail are being held pre-trial, meaning they're legally allowed to vote. However, their only options for voting that exists are to rely on mail-in ballots, which poses a lot of difficulties and challenges for getting that information in time. And then, it often does not come with a voter guide or other voter materials. So without that education, it becomes difficult for people to be, educated voter like somebody else in the community. So the goal with this bill is, again, to establish a pilot program for 3 counties to opt in and then to receive funding to set up in-person polling centers so that, again, that we can increase the voting rates for the eligible population. So this bill passed the Assembly floor at the end of January. It's currently pending in the Senate. It should have a hearing in the Senate Elections Committee in late May or early June. Sponsors besides IJ include Ella Baker Center, Pillars of the Community, and the League of Women Voters. So this is a bill that was introduced last year. We picked it up in January, got it out of the first house. Now it's pending in the second house, and we're moving forward for what I think it'll make an important difference. Are there any questions about this bill? Cool. So second bill here, also a 2-year bill, is AB 1186 with Assemblymember Mia Bonta. This is related to youth restitution. It's about completely re-envisioning and reimagining how youth restitution will work in California. It'll do away with individual payments and instead will hold youth accountable in more appropriate ways like restorative justice sessions, community service, and being connected to other job opportunities. So it's really, I think, if you look at this in a long-term sense, the goal here would be that this becomes the model for the adult restitution system as well. that instead of charging people who often don't have the money or it becomes a very significant financial burden, California has the money, they should be paying for it, and then we can hold people accountable in other ways. So that's the goal with AB 1186, start with the youth, overhaul that restitution system, and then maybe one day, like I'm saying, this can become the template for a larger play. So AB 1186 made it all the way out of the Assembly and the Senate. Excuse me, it's pending in the Senate. It should have a hearing later this year. This bill is really going to have a significant appropriation because you're going to need money to backfill the existing restitution charges, and that's part of the ongoing conversation at this time. This bill is sponsored by Debt Free Justice California, which is a large coalition that Initiate Justice is part of, but also just dozens of really awesome policy organizations in this space are working on this bill as well, and it's a priority for many of them. So AB 1186, it's a really, really great bill. And again, it's a 2-year bill, so hopefully some of y'all remember this and it's familiar to you all. Cool. So the next bill, I'm sure some of you have seen. Oh, great question from Jasmine. Yes, youth is defined under AB 1186 as under 18. So if you're under 18 and you have that restitution order, then it would be under 1186, become completely changed. That's a good clarifying question. So for ACA 4, I'm sure some of you have seen the update already, but that bill is not moving forward, does not have the necessary support, so it will not be appearing on the ballot. ACA 4 would have allowed people in prison the right to vote. However, it's a 2/3 measure, which means you need 54 votes in the Assembly and 27 in the Senate just to then qualify for the ballot, and the support from the legislature was not there. So it's not moving forward. This is another one that's a long-term effort. I'm sure there'll be future plans to come back and try again, but ACA 4 is not moving forward at this time. Sponsors of ACA 4 included the Free the Vote Coalition with Initiate Justice and many other great players. That's the update for ACA 4. So now we'll get into the 5 new bills that we're working on this year. The first one is AB 1986 with Assemblymember Isaac Bryan. This is related to CDCR's book ban list. So currently CDCR has a list of about 1,600 publications that are banned by the prison system, meaning incarcerated people are not allowed to read books. And if they do have those books, it's considered contraband, and there can be more punishment and things like that for the possession of them. But what AB 1986 is going to do is bring more review and transparency of this list of banned books by empowering the Inspector General to review that list, post it publicly online, and then pull books off that list that should not be banned. So some examples here. Yes, examples of banned books for sure. Oh, Crispy, yes, AB 1595 also not moving forward. That's a companion bill for ACA 4. It wouldn't become operative without it anyway. Examples of banned books, yes, there are many. It's actually been a topic of conversation with the Initiate Justice team. Some of the most, personally for me, one of my favorite books is The Kite Runner, something I read growing up. That book is banned by CDCR. Handmaid's Tale, books by Nelson Mandela are banned. Books by George Jackson are banned. There's additional books that are banned. Like I said, there's 1,600 of them, but some of the other examples that come to mind are any book that is seen as depicting nudity or any sort of sexual content is banned. So, for example, the autobiography of Lady Gaga is banned in CDCR. That is just a tiny example to show that if there's any book that has any depiction of certain things that the prison system does not allow, they ban it outright. So another way of thinking about this is highlighting the books that are not banned. So for example, Mein Kampf, which is the autobiography of Hitler, is not banned by CDCR, right? But books by Latino authors and Black freedom fighters are being banned. So I see a lot of activity here in the chat. And oh yeah, there's a great link there from Marshall Project there. Yeah, you can see it across the country. California's list is expansive. But the work this year is just going to bring more oversight and review to it, which is really important. So this bill will actually go to the Assembly Public Safety Committee next week. on March 12th, Tuesday. It'll have a great testimony from one of the community members we're working with who was incarcerated for a long time, excuse me. And it's important to note also that this bill is part of the Black Caucus Reparations Task Force. So that task force is made up of several legislators. They're working on many issues related to reparations. And this is one of the bills they're highlighting to move it forward, really for the racial justice impact of many books written by Black authors and Black freedom fighters that are being banned by CDCR. And just knowing the roots of that are white supremacy and not letting people know the true history of this country. So this is a great bill. I encourage you all to learn more and to watch out for this one as it moves forward. Cool. So the next bill we're going to talk about is AB 2065. It's related to the Racial Justice Act. Many of you here probably know what the Racial Justice Act is, but it's a landmark bill that IJ helped pass 4 years ago now. The Racial Justice Act allows someone to challenge their sentence or their conviction if they can prove that there was racial bias or discrimination during the process. So you can prove that in 4 different ways. 2 of the ways are if you can prove a statistical variance in the use of arrests or enhancements or other criminal justice outcomes that disadvantage someone because of their race, and you need to prove that with the stats, the data, the evidence that you can get. The other 2 ways are through conduct of a judge, jury, attorney, expert witness who are making racially coded language or comments in a courtroom that then have an impact on the outcome. So the RJA is now the law for everybody who's incarcerated as well. It's fully retroactive as of January 1st this year. However, some of the issues that are coming up with implementation is folks being able to access the county data they need for their RJA claim. So as I mentioned, if you are someone who's incarcerated and you're looking to challenge your sentence under the statute, you need a whole lot of data to litigate on your behalf to say that somebody in my position, there are other cohorts of people in a different population that have a lesser rate of arrest, lesser rates of enhancements being added to their sentence. And so getting the access to that data right now is very, very difficult. You really need a lawyer working very hard on your behalf and jumping through all the hoops. But this bill, AB 2065, is going to open up all that data. It'll be published by the Department of Justice, CDCR, and the Judicial Council. And it'll be published online so you can do for your further analysis. It's a really, really great bill, and it continues Initiate Justice's commitment to rectifying systemic racism and giving folks an ability to challenge that and get back to court. Large coalition supporting this one, but it includes the Ella Baker Center, CCWP, American Friends Service Committee, CURB, NextGen, and CJCJ, which is a research group. But it's really important, and it's really going to help the spirit and the intent of the RJA come into more focus. And I believe it'll help more people get relief ultimately. So it's a really important bill. It's all about the data, and this bill is going to help us open that up. Cool. So the next bill we're going to talk about now is related to the BPH, Board of Parole Hearings. AB 2310 with Assemblymember Greg Hart is about parole language access. So this bill is just going to ensure that parole candidates are able to receive all materials and then have a translator and a qualified interpreter during the hearings in their native language if it's not English. So right now there's not statutory guidance over this, meaning the BPH does not have to provide all this information in someone's preferred language, whether it's Spanish or something else. And so obviously that's problematic for folks not understanding the process, what's going on, but then also knowing the larger issues with the parole process, knowing that there's about an 80 to 85% denial rate each year. Many factors go into that. And one of the factors that was identified here is the lack of language access. And, in that sense, brings up equity and justice concerns that if folks are not able to participate in this hearing, they will not be able to fully get relief. Crispy's question, does this include ASL translators for the hearing impaired? Couple questions here. So Crispy, no, that's a separate process. For folks who need ASL translation for the hearing impaired, that's already available. When we're talking about parole language access, we mean someone who's a Spanish speaker or a different language, not English, and their ability to fully participate by having a qualified interpreter. My understanding is that the ASL translator is already available for people who are hearing impaired, and that other services are made available, for example, for someone who's blind or vision impaired, that those types of disabilities are already being covered. However, from a language access position, that's when there's gaps in the law. So Bianca, great question. Also, all these bills that we're talking about have just been introduced, as you'll see as the update on each slide, meaning they're at the beginning of the legislative process. They have to go clear both their houses this year, and then they will end up hopefully on the governor's desk by September. Yeah, so yeah, in the process of being passed. You're right, great comment, Adriana. We're just getting started on that. Valerie has a question. Is there any data that, so that's another great, it brings up a larger point here that CDCR and BPH are not keeping accurate information as it relates to that, with how many people, English is not their native language and they're participating. I think, when you just sort of think of it from a common sense perspective, you would assume the parole denial rate is higher or more likely for someone who just, doesn't know what's going on because they're not able to fully participate in their native language. But that's, again, one of the issues here is that there's not accurate records. What we have seen that exists is not really that helpful. So we know that this bill is super important. Bianca, we have a bill proposal form that we can share with you that will help you sort of take your idea, put it into a legislative proposal, and then, as you're saying there, you can share it with your assembly member or senator. That has to happen at the beginning of the year, though. It's too late at this point to introduce bills in 2024. So the next bill we're going to talk about is AB 2483 from Assembly Member Phil Ting. This is about general resentencing procedures. So this bill is just going to make it so when someone's back in court for a 1437 petition or, some other, maybe an RJA or whatever else, if someone's back in court, it's just going to establish uniform procedures across different counties so that everybody has the same experience, procedurally speaking, when they get back to court. This is a huge problem because that's not happening right now. Right. And it's very common to hear people saying in one county, like LA County, there's different challenges, like a long wait list or whatever, versus in a different county, there's a judge that ignores the petition and doesn't think they have to act on it. So it's really important that as we continue to pass all these great laws and get people resentenced, we also need to make sure that those resentencings go smoothly, right? And that folks who are eligible for relief are getting back to court, are having great hearings, and then they can hopefully get released and be able to come home. But the problem right now is that's not happening. So AB 2483 is going to set forth about 5 or 6 different important things here that will allow for fair and efficient resentencings. And again, these are just general legal procedures that will apply up and down the state to all California courtrooms. I think one of the most important things that it's going to do is require all the stakeholders to meet regularly. So judges, public defenders, other law enforcement people, because without that coordination, it's not clear on what the plan is here. What is LA County's plan to implement this law or somebody else? And it's also going to require CDCR to assist an incarcerated person with obtaining the records they need in a more timely manner. Because right now, when a resentencing moves forward, the first thing that DA is going to ask for is for someone's C file and this other information from CDCR. And CDCR doesn't have any legislative guideline about how quickly or how promptly they should be moving forward with that in terms of passing it on. So AB 2043 is going to be really important. It's not going to get anyone back to court on its own. It's just going to help people who are already there, who've already filed a petition, to have a fair and efficient process. So this bill was just introduced last month. It is also a Penal Code Revision Committee idea. Oh, I don't know about that. If family requests a C file, I'm not sure. I think the answer is no, but I'd have to double check on that. But I can do that for you and follow up. Oh, I see assistance here. Perhaps. We'll get clarity on that one. So finally, last of the new bills we're going to talk about is AB 2833 with Assemblymember Tina McKinner. This is the Restorative Justice Integrity Act. This bill is going to move forward with evidentiary protections so that if I say something in a restorative justice session as somebody who's caused harm, that what I am admitting and what I'm talking about cannot be used against me in a future legal proceeding. Right now, that protection does not exist. So if I admit to, a very serious harm, or, I'm telling someone that, everything that happened in my life that led me to that moment, and, the usual themes that happen in a restorative justice session, any of that can be used against someone at a future legal proceeding. And without these protections in place, it really undermines the integrity of that RJ session in the first place. So what we're going to do with this bill is put new laws in place around what is admissible evidence. Yes, Crispy, we don't have solid data on that question. And it's not necessarily that people have been prosecuted for what they've said, but there's people who are reluctant to engage in that process because they know what they say could be used against them. The latter is what's happening more frequently. But also going forward anyway, as restorative justice becomes more popular, and is becoming really picking up steam and is being seen as an alternative to the adult criminal justice system, having these protections in place will ensure that the survivor, that their agency is centered, that they can opt into this process, and that even the person who's caused harm, they know that it's a safe space or a trusting space where they can really open up. So because this bill it's going to touch some constitutional protections related to what's admissible evidence and what isn't, it requires a 2/3 vote, meaning you need 54 votes in the Assembly and 27 votes in the Senate. So it's an uphill battle, but we think it's a really important bill. It's important to note here that there's already some Republican co-authors on this bill, which I think speaks to the importance of, survivors and their agency being front and center. And if a survivor wants to opt into this process, there needs to be protections in place so it can really be a meaningful and high integrity process. And that's what this bill is going to allow. So including IJ, the other sponsors here are CSJ, Courage, AFSC, Community Works, and the RISE Center. Those are a couple other restorative justice groups that are practicing in the schools and in jails and in the prisons as well. So those are the bills that Initiate Justice will be working on this year. We will provide updates through the year as the bill goes to the various policy committees as they hopefully pass the probes and go through the floor and get to the governor. You can request more information from us, or you can always send me an email. It's super easy to contact me. My email is greg@initiatejustice.org. Happy to give folks more information as it relates to these bills, or if they have questions. I know it's a lot of information, so folks, I would encourage people to really would diversion programs qualify as restorative justice programs? It really depends. It's hard to answer that. Sometimes yes, but that's not every county, and that's not like the law across California. That's more of a depends the county you're in and the program that's happening. So these are the bills. We don't have any more slides, but I did want to take a moment to talk about the political climate, just so folks understand that this is going to be a different year as it relates to criminal justice reform than we've seen in the past, right? There's a lot that's going on right now. Globally speaking, this is an election year, right? That's always when things get more moderate. There's also a huge budget crisis right now in California. There's, depending the source you look at, a $40 billion deficit. Some people say it's even more. California is considering making cuts to various departments and social safety nets in order to close that gap. all of which makes it unlikely that the governor is going to sign a bill that has more costs attached to it, because that would just further the deficit. And then also, when you're just thinking about the criminal justice system in general, the reform that we've seen in the past few years has been really, really incredible, and we've done a lot. However, we're experiencing now a backlash. You're seeing a lot of panic around retail theft and shoplifting. If you go to your local Target or CVS, it seems like nowadays half the store is behind the glass and is locked up. And so a lot of the responses to these issues that we know are, economic or people having unmet needs, the response is heavy-handed in law enforcement and rolling back Prop 47. So the retail theft space is super vulnerable to a lot of bad bills, trying to criminalize poverty. Another issue area that's vulnerable is related to 3 strikes. There's a couple bills this year that have already been proposed to try to add more crimes to the 3 strike series so that they can extend sentences that way. And then we also know, finally, the war on drugs and just criminalizing drug use, mostly related to fentanyl, but some other drugs as well. We've seen a lot of bills to increase penalties for that, send more people to prison, all of which we know is not effective and doesn't help. So just, again, speaking globally, those are larger issues that are at play at this moment that I just, ran through all these great bills we're working on. But we know that those issues are ongoing and that they pose a significant difficulty for what we're trying to accomplish here. So I'm trying to catch up here in the chat, but if folks have other comments, please feel free to ask them now. And again, if you sowed this information, you can ask questions at a later date, which may be the most helpful for people.
Thank you so much, Greg. I see a question in the chat. I'm not sure if you got to this one. It's from Bianca about the types of restorative justice programs that are out there.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot. Was it? Is there a more specific question, or is it just what
No,
is
I think
restorative justice?
It's just a general question that you put, what are the types of restorative justice programs out there? So I think you kind of answered it, like there's quite a few, and it definitely does depend on the harm, I guess you could say. So there's youth restorative justice, there's diversion programs that could be considered restorative justice. And so there's just a plethora of different types of programs and stuff out there. So definitely look in your local communities with community-based organizations, even like call up your local DA's office and see if they run any diversion type programs out of probation or DA's office, because sometimes they do that through like a plea in abeyance situation. And that's how they kind of get folks wrapped up into that, like anything you say can and will be used against you because it's a plea in abeyance situation. So but yeah, I hope that answered that question somewhat. Sorry, Greg. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. I think you awesome. You're welcome, Brianna. I think you pretty much answered everything. Frankie has a question. Go ahead, Frankie.
Okay, my question is, because I was specifically interested in the book ban, and maybe someone can give me more information, because I'm particularly interested in, like, why are the Nawa books banned? So I have a question if anyone can answer, like, are all language books banned in CDCR right now, or is it specifically that one? Like, languages?
So I can answer that. I don't know who put that in the chat individually, but CDCR has a list of regulations that gives them broad ability to ban books that they essentially say fall under safety and security concerns. So if they can somehow justify that a book related to a language in question here or something else would not be in the penological interest of the system, they're allowed to ban it. So essentially they can ban anything they want, right? Because they have that broad ability. So I don't know the individual circumstances here, but the point of the bill is CDCR, their authority is way too broad, so they can get away with essentially whatever they want.
Yeah, that book ban thing is absolutely wild. I had put it in the chat. I'm not sure if anybody caught it, but when I was incarcerated at CIW, I actually read one of the books that was banned but was received through the mailroom. and it was 50 Shades of Grey. I read all 3 of the 50 Shades of Grey books at CIW. And it's so funny to me that the first book is banned, but the second 2 are not. And they're all like they're all 3 dealing with the same like S&M bondage type of stuff. And so it's very strange to me that they're like banning one book in the series, but not the whole series. So we definitely need like a process and structure when it comes to that. So shout out to the policy team for working on that. Books are important, y'all. Reading is fundamental. Are there any other questions? Also, feel free to come off mute, raise your hand, and we'll invite you off mute. I'm seeing some chats come through, but I don't think they're necessarily like questions and things like that. So Bianca said, I'd like to propose a book to limit the power of prosecutors. I love it. I absolutely love it. Crispy, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all these great bills and all the work that the policy team is working on. So we just had our primary elections yesterday. So I was wondering if there's going to be some analysis on the people who are being voted into the Assembly and the Senate based on some of this initial information. And, you know, are we seeing that the tide is changing to be more progressive Democrat, or is it going more conservative, or is it too soon?
So I can jump in. It's too soon for a couple of reasons. One is that they're still going to be counting votes for the next few weeks. So certain races, you just don't even know who the candidate is. And then also this was just the primary. So we'll see who advances to general. On a Dem on Dem race, then it's more likely, for things to get more moderate. But if it's a Dem versus Republican, then you would hope things get more progressive. But again, you first need to sift through all of the results, and then we'd be able to share back some of our findings. I don't anticipate us doing that publicly, but again, I'm happy to chat with folks and give more an analysis in a few weeks when we have a better picture.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Crispy, for that question. I know like out here in San Joaquin County where I'm at, as I was just looking at the first batch of results coming in, I was like, but like Greg said, it is still really early. It's literally the next day. And so they're going to be counting these things for a couple of weeks until they can certify the election. And so we will see and keep our foot on their necks. No matter what the outcome is, right? So no matter what the outcome with these elections, we already know, as Greg mentioned earlier, and for those of you who had the opportunity to join our Community Action Committee meeting last month, we know that this year is just going to be a rough year for CJ reform. And even for folks that are going to be voted in or voted out or whatnot, still could be very, very difficult. So don't count out your hope yet. Stay hopeful. Don't be like me and be obsessed with looking at the voter turnout every 5 minutes. Relax, let it come. And I think not just, and I'm not speaking for IJ here, but just in general as a community, I know that we will do what we have to do to make sure that our voices are continued to be heard, no matter who ends up in these seats come November. So just wanted to shout that out. But are there any other questions that folks have in regards to our co-sponsored legislation for Greg while he is here? And shout out again to Greg and our policy team. They're extremely busy. And so we really appreciate them taking the time to be able to join for these meetings and provide y'all with all of this lovely information. Crispy, go ahead.
Sorry for another question. I was wondering if any of these bills are also being supported by members of the advisory committee that was set up at the San Quentin Prison Rehabilitation Center, for how they're starting the California model there. I was wondering if any of those orgs, people who are on the advisory committee, like I think ARC is part of that too, if they're supporting any of our bills.
Yes, Crispy, they will likely support these bills.
Amazing. Yeah, I know I joined one of the, for those that don't know, we are also a part of the CURB Coalition, Californians United for a Responsible Budget. And so I have the opportunity to sit in some of those meetings. And so like for our processes in terms of like making sure that folks are supporting our policy team works very hard to ensure that letters of support, templates, and things like that get out to all of the CJ orgs and the ones and the supporters and the allies, so that we can make sure that everybody's informed and has their chance to get their support in for that. So thank you for that, Crispy, and thank you for your answer, Greg. Sherry, I see you have a hand. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, Greg, I'm sure you have a list of how the vote went on the prison voting rights bill. Would you be maybe having us work on those legislators that voted no to move it on? Or is that something we don't have, or we just have to guess at it, or? I don't know if it's
Yeah, it's a really good question. So to be clear, it never even came up for a vote. So we don't have an official people who are on the record supporting or not. The point is that it was, very short of getting to the threshold that it needed to move forward. So I think an individual list is not the most helpful, but I think there's larger things that we can do and that we plan to do to continue to talk about this, raise the issue. I know Adriana and Brianna here are going to do a lot of stuff with in-district visits and meet and greets. It's continuing to build those connections so that when they hear about this, it's not as crazy next time because they know we've tried before and there's consistent and support for it. But just speaking overall, getting the 54 votes in the assembly is really, really difficult. And especially this year with this climate, it's hard to see how, a lot of these important things are going to be able to move forward. So there wasn't the support this year, but you know that IG is going to try again. And next time we try, I think we are going to tap on folks for that consistent in-district voices to help us with the advocacy.
I know I sound a little ignorant, but so it didn't come up to a vote. So how do you know it wasn't going to get support? By just canvassing them?
Yeah, essentially, right? I mean, you do meet, you talk with the offices, but when a bill is eligible for a floor vote, there's like a whole separate process here. We don't need to get into it too much, but there is a process in the Assembly and the Senate that you submit your vote count. And only bills that have the necessary votes will even be brought up on the floor in the first place. So HCA 4 was very far from even getting to that process because the legislative offices themselves, they have a vote count. They talk to the other offices. They see, do you have a aye recommendation? Do you have a no recommendation? Are you abstaining? They then tabulate all that themselves. And then when they have the threshold they need, they take it for a floor vote and they can bring it up. So during the process of counting the votes for ACA 4, that's when Assemblymember Bryan and his team realized that it was short of what they needed. So you don't even bring it up for a vote in that case, mostly just because there's too many other bills and too much business going on that they're not going to allow you to bring something up that doesn't have the votes in the first place.
So it's more internal that they're getting their count.
Yeah, exactly. And so again, for that bill, you had 54 in the Assembly, 27 in the Senate, which a majority bill would have just been 41, which is a lot easier threshold than what IJ usually works on. So internally, the coalition and the author's office knew there was not sufficient support. That's why ACA 4 didn't move forward.
Thank you. That makes it more clear. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, those are great questions, Sherry. I think sometimes, I know for me, I be talking to people and I forget that not everybody is in the weeds all day, every day, 7 days a week. And so it's really good we get questions like that allows us to kind of pause, take a step back, and sort of just explain more of that strategic process that goes into making sure like a bill passes and things like that. Because yeah, it's a lot of strategy, a lot of internal conversations and things like that. And sometimes you just have to, you got to strategize and you got to make a strategy play. And this is something that obviously we're disappointed in, but feel is overall better because it gives us more time to really, like I said, concentrate and amplify narrative shifting, storytelling, and focus on maybe some of the smaller things that we also need to get done. So sometimes we got to pick our battles. So thank you. Yes, it gets very complicated, Sherry. So God bless you as well for like tapping in and trying to understand the complicated mess that it is. So appreciate that and appreciate you all for tuning in and hanging out. Are there any other questions? Crispy, go ahead. And then
Sorry,
we're
I just
at,
love
right before you
legislation so
go,
much.
right before you
Lisa-
go, Crispy, I'm going to make a
Yeah.
quick announcement. So we'll do your question. And then I see a question in the chat from Bianca, so we'll get that one. And then we will transition. We have some other announcements and some calls to action that we want to go over before we let folks go. So go ahead, Crispy.
Yeah, just was wondering if there's any effort this year from, other organizations in the coalitions that we're part of that are trying to repeal 3 strikes and what the status of that effort is.
No, it's not happening this year, but they're regrouping, like we're saying with ACA 4, and they will try again in the future.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I see one question in the chat from Bianca, but I feel like this is more of just like a community-esque question, wanting to know if there's anyone based that's here this evening, anyone based from Orange County or LA. I see a few folks from the LA area, but definitely tap in with Bianca because it sounds like she's out here trying to build community and connect to folks. So thank you for that. And Erica said that she is in Riverside. Sherry's in OC. So yes, you're getting lots of responses in the chat, Bianca. So definitely hit folks up and connect. Awesome. All right. If there's any other questions, definitely feel free to amplify those in the chat and we'll make sure to circle back and get those answered. Right now, I want to shift gears just a little bit before we end tonight and share a call to action that we have for y'all. So y'all know about our bills. Greg went through all of our bills, explained what those bills were and things like that. And as you know, with bills come committee hearings and policy committee hearings. And so, I was going to say Bianca, not Bianca, Brianna, if you can share the call to action slide. Thank you so much. So we have a call to action for folks tonight. So the Assembly Public Safety Committee is conducting a hearing on Tuesday, March 12th. So that's this coming Tuesday. So it's only a few days away. And so the Assembly Public Safety Committee is made up of the following members that you see here on your screen in these particular districts. And so what we are asking is that if folks from these districts, if you live in one of these districts, if one of these folks is your assembly member, so Kevin McCarty up in Sacramento, Juana Lanes from Stanislaus County, Lori Wilson, et cetera, Tom Lackey, if any of these folks are your assembly member, we want to encourage you to reach out to their office, to call their office and let them know that you are asking them to support and oppose the other bills that you see on the other side of your screen. So it's a long list, but we have support AB 1887. I'm not going to go through them all. Y'all can see them there. I encourage you to screenshot, take a picture, grab this, so you have the information here. But one of our bills is going to be heard at this upcoming Public Safety Committee hearing, and that is AB 1986 by Assemblymember Bryant, and that is our CDCR book ban bill. And so if nothing else, we really want to encourage y'all to at least call your member and have them support that bill, if nothing else, but definitely want to be in support of these other ones, as well as opposition for these bills as well. We've got one that's targeting recall and resentencing, another fentanyl bill. There's one that is geared towards loitering with intent for prostitution. So again, criminalizing survivors of sexual violence and things like that that are engaging in survival sex or whatever it might be. And then also AB 2035 by Assemblymember Patterson. And this bill touches on conditional releases. So all of the ones that we are asking folks to oppose are ones that are either increasing penalties, further criminalizing things, or leaving people out of certain things like with conditional releases and stuff like that. So we really just want to make sure that we have our voices, system impacted voices, folks that are closest to the problem, to call their members and say, I support. Just call and simply say, ask to support and oppose, nothing more. That's a great question, Terry. Brianna, can you go to the next slide, please? We have a sample script for y'all. So it's very, very simple. You just call up your member and say, hi, my name is Adriana. I'm calling from Stockton. You can add the I'm a constituent if you would like to. But you basically just say, I'm calling from Stockton to encourage the assembly member to support the following bills. AB 1877, et cetera, right? After you list off those, take a little pause, make sure that they heard you and clearly wrote down all of those things. If they missed one, repeat it. Then also let them know you also want to encourage the member to oppose AB 1809, et cetera. Say thank you. Again, make sure that they got all of the bills that you are asking to support and or oppose. And then that's it. It's super simple. You can also do this after hours. So if you're more comfortable with leaving a voicemail, you can leave a voicemail. You can also email your members as well. So that is all an option. If you don't know who your assembly member is, you can head over to findyourrep.legislature.ca.gov and find your rep that way. You will put in your address information and it will pop up with your specific member, both assembly member and state senator. And so remember, only, if you can go back to the other slide, Brianna, appreciate it. We are only asking folks that live in these particular districts to call their members. We will have opportunity for more folks to engage their members for support after it makes it out of this committee. But for right now, we're just focusing on the members that sit on this particular committee. Greg, I don't know. I see you're still here. Greg, do you want to add anything about this call to action or any other instructions or any other helpful things for folks to be aware of?
No, other than this is super important. When we don't use our voices, the legislators don't know what our values are. And you can always guarantee that the law enforcement, sheriffs, all these districts are making the calls. So if we want our perspective to be part of the conversation, we need to make these calls and encourage folks to do so as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg. Absolutely. And all of these bills, I don't have the links for them up here, but all of these bills can be found on LegInfo. So it's the space where all of the bills go, all of the information is there. So you can definitely pull those up to read more on them and determine your own personal support, opposition, whatnot. But we're definitely asking folks who are our supporters and our allies to call their members and support and oppose these bills. Any questions about this particular call to action?
Yeah, I have a question. Statement to make. This Dr. Ashanti speaking. To facilitate and expedite this call to action, we're doing this IJ Zoom conference. You have about 10, 20, 30 people on here. I have an ambulance going by.
I'm sorry,
back to the point, waiting for this ambulance to go by. At any rate, back to the point, you have all these, I just put in the chat a long statement dealing with suggestion that all of these prisoner parolee probation reentry programs, I list some of them like this, IJ, Initiate Justice, you have CEO, Center for Employment Opportunity, you have ARC, I think that's Anti-Recidivist Coalition. Anyways, a whole bunch of other ABCXYC alphabetical organizations. And my point is that they should be Zoom conferencing with community organization national groups like ACLU, NAACP. These guys also get involved in fields. My point is that if there's a coordinated network between the IJ and initiative staff to initiate justice, the administrative wing, not like the regular people, I've said myself here, but administrative wing should contact the administrative wing of all these other groups, like the CEO, the ARC, and the ACLU, and then you coordinate better. It'd be like a wave community response when you contact California legislature, senators, and the assemblymen to get stuff passed. So, I mean, everybody doing this piecemeal, they like everyone like on their own. that's like scattered effort. My point is that to have a more coordinated effort to initiate justice. And I've communicated, emailed with the other groups, the ARC, CEO, I'm also a member of them, that they should come together when it's time for these bills to be passed by the legislature. It should be a coordinated organizational effort instead of everyone going up there on their own and they just dipping and dabbing and picking and voting with different legislators to try to get stuff passed.
No, that's a great, no, thank you for your comments. And I will say, Initiate Justice, we are a part of a variety of different coalitions that we work on these bills with. And there is definitely a coordinated effort for opposition and support. We work with many different folks in the space, including ARC and CEO and some others. And so there is a coordinated effort. I'm not too sure what exactly you are referencing with this particular thing. But we do coordinated efforts with folks. And then I know you dropped something in the chat in terms of like for folks that are currently incarcerated. And so we also have folks that are working with them, and we do connect them with like legal resources and things like that if they feel like they want to go the next step in terms of like lawsuits and
My point is the Zoom
things like that
that you're
nature.
doing now. Does Initiate Justice? You guys have Zoom meetings with all the other groups where
So this is our monthly member meeting, or our monthly community meeting. And so we do this meeting particular once a month just to bring folks together to let them know what IJ is working on. And then throughout the month, various different team members are coordinating with other organizations and things like that. So it is a coordinated effort. But definitely we appreciate you being in this space and always like willing to just share your insights and your experience. Like we welcome that from anybody. So we really, really appreciate it. Any other questions, comments, reflections? Awesome. I'm not seeing none. So I hope everybody was able to screen grab this slide. Brianna, you could stop share now. Awesome. Thank you. And oh, Eric, I see that you have a question. Go ahead.
I want to know, what are your thoughts on AB, what is it, 1226?
1226.
And that's for keeping incarcerated families close to their children.
Well, I personally am all about keeping families close, whether it's you with your kids or not. I know I was in CIW and my parents lived all the way up here in Stockton, so quite a significant distance. So personally, I'm all for it. I'd have to read more of the particular bill language just to let you know if I see like any particular like red flags or anything like that. But just face value, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I feel as a wife with married with somebody incarcerated, I've seen many different scenarios in different prison settings. So I wanted to get your your pros and your cons on that bill. Just wanted to pick your brain.
Awesome, yeah. So feel free to email me and we can hop on a call and definitely we can pick it apart together.
Okay, sounds good. We'll most definitely do.
Absolutely, thank you. All righty, it is about 7:40. Thanks for joining, Delphina. It is about 7:40, so I'm going to pass it back to Brianna just to take us into our close with just some additional like FYIs.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adriana. And thank you so much for everyone for your comments and questions and everything. It was a really productive discussion, and I'm excited to just see what this year has in store along all of you. And just before we close, I have one announcement for an in-person event that we have coming up. We'll be at California State Northridge, so CSUN, for a Justice and Wellness Resource Fair. So we'll be setting up a table there. It will take place on March 28th and starts at 10 a.m. All are welcome to attend. There'll be a lot of other organizations tabling there, giving out resources. So it'll be a super cool event. Super excited to be in space and show up for IJ. And then just future meeting spaces in the future and coming up, we have our Community Action Committee meeting for March. That will be happening March 27th at 6:30 p.m. And this one will be focusing a lot on more regional specific discussions, the importance of regional advocacy, and just kind of give you guys some tools that will help you just build community and be like a strong advocate in your region, which is super important. We're super excited to like dive into these regional discussions and be super intentional and just provide everyone with all the tools that they need to be as powerful as possible with their voice. And then last but not least, our April member meeting will take place on April 3rd at 6:30. And these will be linked in the chat for you all to RSVP. And other than that, thank you all for joining us tonight. We're excited to see you all in future spaces and just continue having these discussions. So thank you. And we hope you all have a good rest of your night. And Adriana, do you have anything to add before?
Nope. That's all. Thanks, everyone. Have a good
Thank
night,
you
and we'll
all.
see you next time.